Welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help you close your personal and professional gaps by hearing how others have done it. I am your host, Chris Burkhardt, and today I'm pretty excited to have Nikhil Paul on the show. We're old friends. Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on Outside Insights today.
Thank you, Chris. So happy to be here. I'm very, very grateful for you to have me here. Yeah, this is a long time coming. You and I have been friends for a long time. So this is just one of an ongoing series of conversations we're going to be having for the rest of our life. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, brother.
And
Thank you.
I think it's true that the idea of a podcast being just another conversation in the living room, I
Yeah,
think we're very blessed to have had that. So people don't like when you read bios, but I think the story of how we've met and how we've maintained connections is a
right.
great way to tell people what you do today. You want to get it started on how we met, and I'll fill
Yeah,
in some.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please do fill in because it's very interesting. There are not too many people that I've had, these kind of official conversations with where I've known for as long and as intimately in some ways as I know you, Chris. Yeah, I was in my final year of college in University of Delaware in my senior year, and I was in a business plan competition, and you were one of the judges at that competition. And it was, it might seem like, oh, that was where we originally met, but actually in a lot of ways it was also very pivotal because you were so intentional. I remember that even at our first meeting when you meet a lot of as a young student you're meeting a lot of entrepreneurs and mentors, and as part of that program you stood out right away because you were very intentional and you were very kind and very like you for a young kid to get that level of attention and respect, right? Like we're all coming with ideas and half-baked ideas, but you were so respectful of the time and space of us entrepreneurs, and I remember making such a strong connection with you, and you were very encouraging. You said something so encouraging at that
So
competition.
I think we all have to pay it forward, right,
Yeah,
Nikhil? I mean, the
yeah,
truth is, someone sat down with me when I had a half-cocked idea and helped me shape it or frame it. I think
right.
entrepreneurs are very generous in right. They're generous in
Yes,
their
yes.
stories. They're generous in their connections, and it's a hard path. But I remember you having more ideas than you had more than one business plan in you. I know that, and
Yeah, yeah.
right at that particular point. But I think, I mean, guys, that's some time ago, right? And we've kind of just stayed connected over the years. Is it fair to say that's more than 10 years ago?
Oh, definitely more than 10 years. That would be giving me credit for how old, old I am. Yeah, no, it was 2009. So yeah, definitely about 15, 16 years. Yeah.
So we've recently reconnected, and I knew you when you were doing more leadership stuff. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about what you're up to today. What's giving you energy today?
Yeah, I mean, my when you and I met, I was in the startup phase, and that was a big chunk of my early to mid 20s was me building the startup. And so, I went off outside of Delaware, and then kind of went to New York City to build my startup, and I did that for a whole bunch of years. But then at some point, I pivoted my career because what I found the things that drove me the most, gave me the most energy was problem solving with the client, was really kind of being in the moment and kind of facilitating solutions and problem solving with client. And I was like, in the second part of my career after my startup shut down, I was like, how do I make this a career? What does this look like? And so that led me into the path of coaching and training and facilitation. And so I just called up all my old software clients and I said, hey, how's your team doing? How's the morale of your business? And I just started using the same kind of principles of building a product for a customer, was just asking what's your biggest problems and then solving it, then doing research, finding out. And so for the past 6 years I've been doing executive coaching and training and leadership team coaching, but recently in the past 2 years especially I've been really focused on connecting coaching and training to business outcomes, because in my experience of having done this, what I've realized is that energy, culture, morale, leadership, all these kind of big juicy buzzwords in coaching and training and how we try to motivate people, I believe they're within the sandbox of two bigger things that affect the culture and the leadership abilities of the people in the company. First is, how authentically connected is the leader to the business? And this might sound a little bit vague, but it's really is meaningful. And that was something that it kind of came as an aha moment to me, where it's like, the CEO's feeling of authentic in touch connection to the business directly contributes to how much they want to invest in the culture and the big efforts they need to revitalize the culture. So that's the first part I've really realized about. The second part is the stability of the business. If the business is not stable as it's going, as it's growing, as it's scaling, that can immediately erode the trust, right? Like you see in families, they say for children to have a happy childhood, you need to have a stable family life. The same principle applies to businesses. If it's too chaotic and if the business is all over the place, people start looking out for themselves, right? Trust starts eroding. And so why I say all of this to say is that this is part of my evolution where I realized that the coaching and training I'm doing is part of a larger ecosystem. That ecosystem has to be addressed. And so with that, today, I now call myself a small business growth coach because I connect the coaching and the leadership training that I do directly to the connection of the leader to the business and the stability of the business on its way up. And so for me, that's where I reside.
So I'd be really curious with your 2 points. I was just connecting on something. Frankly, in the Scaling Up organization, Vern Harnish put something out that
Yes.
talked about founders and the fact that, be careful about founders disconnecting, about
Yeah.
founders. Like, the thought is that they might micromanage that, but that might be okay because that's that purity of their engagement and they're
Right.
leaning forward into the business.
Right.
And I certainly get your point about the stability and the trust. Obviously, small businesses, scaling businesses don't try to make mistakes, right, that create that environment of eroding trust, but it is a real challenge and shifts in market and you lose a big customer or
Exactly.
the
Right.
business gambles and it
Right.
doesn't work, right? And
Right.
I've seen it. Those are two extraordinary points. But yeah, I think that founder thing with the leader is really an interesting challenge. Well, we've been wanting to have this dialogue recorded. We've had it 10 times unrecorded as I smile
Yeah,
about
that's right.
things. I always like to frame like, what's a big question that the audience can have answered at the end of our 38 minutes or 58 minutes? And it's, you do a really cool talk and have content around what is a cult customer.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love the sound of it. Do you need to take us through your methodology or your
Yeah.
framework to understand that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And so this is part of, again, that same story, right? As I'm working with my clients and I'm seeing what's working, what's not working, I started formulating a framework. And Vern Harnish is actually one of the big inspirations in this space, right? And a lot of other luminaries in the world of business and organizational psychology. But really, the framework I have today, I call it the kind cult empire. And it's based around this idea of the cult customer. And the first step in this framework, it's a growth framework. It's to help leaders make a decision, to help leaders scale their business in an effective way that's not only sustainable, but it's also done without losing the company's soul. And so the first part is really what I was talking to you about in the first part, which is you got to find the superstar center of the company. You can see this kind of attributed in Jim Collins's work when he talks about the hedgehog concept in the Good to Great businesses, right? To really be phenomenal as a business, you first need to connect the founder and the leadership team's passion, 100x strengths, their core profit making machine, and a big problem in the world that they're solving, and connect that to the core business strategy and the business plan. So that's the first step that we go. Once you know that, the second step with all my clients I try to talk about is who are your cult customers? And to me, this is absolutely critical because often I think leaders are under the assumption that if we're trying to grow, we need to, and if you want to grow fast and get to the top, we need to have the widest possible strategy, right? But the truth is, real growth only happens when we go deep and dominate our niche. And you will see this time and time again in so many different strategies and frameworks. There's Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, where he talks about the idea is to find a beachhead, a very specific beachhead in one specific market and really own that. And this law applies to even companies at the top because I like to use a statistic that surprises people. But I use it very, very intentionally because I say, guess what is the market share of the most valuable company in the world, which is Apple? And I always ask this in my workshop, what do you think is the market share? And what do you think it is?
It's probably lower than I think, isn't it? It's probably
Yes, I
what,
mean, that's the
30%?
hint. 30%, right? That's a good guess. But actually, the smartphone market for Apple, their share over the past decade has hovered around 15% on average.
That's unbelievable because, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I just let that stat drop and just sit there because when you sit with that statistic, it should really change some of your core assumptions of how you think you need to grow, right? The most valuable company in the world with its most valuable product is only 15% of the market. Once you understand that, you understand a core fundamental theory of life, which is that we don't need everyone to get to the top. We actually just need a small cultish base to get to the top. Defensible scaling is fueled and driven by a hyper excited customer niche. And I use kind of this idea of cult a little tongue in cheek. I do it, as a way to kind of incite a feeling. I don't mean the harmful aspects of a cult. What I mean is that their level of excitement, the level of community, right? And in every business that I've worked with or I've seen, it's almost guaranteed. You can kind of, and Vern Hernish actually talks about this too. He says there's 5 to 10% of the audience who will truly love us and who badly need what we offer in a way that we offer, right? So these are the ones who love us the most, they'll pay us the most, and they'll be the most patient with us when we screw up. We start with this group in our customer base, and that's really where I start my framework with the clients is here. Know your
So
core cult base.
let me ask a question about your
Yeah,
2 points with the Superstar Center. Do they does your work run side by side on those 2 points? Do you have to get your hedgehog right before you focus on the cult customer? Is it a baton handoff?
yeah, that's a great
I've been an
question.
entrepreneur I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I can see how, markets change. Even Apple's markets have changed, right?
Yep,
They're
yep,
looking, I think it's fair to say that they might be looking for their next
100%.
iPhone that
That's
has
right.
their next, you know, group of customers that are coldish around it, right? In order
That's right.
to drive growth.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great question. I think of it more as it's a dance that you're doing, right? I think great
Okay.
businesses are a dance between knowing who we are, who is our most authentic kind of superstar selves, and then also knowing who are the cult customers that best will dance with us, right? And within that partnership is where true profits, growth, and domination, right? If you're able to find the perfect dance, first you have to figure out what dance you love doing the most, and then figure out your ideal dance partner. That's the only way you're going to really have a great time. And so it's a duality of both is the answer I would say to that. You need to know both simultaneously. Yeah,
So if you're working with really small businesses, they just want to sell stuff to keep the lights on.
that's right.
That's an interesting, all right. It's really a beautiful way to describe it with the dance. And I
That's
think
right.
that works for me, and I get it. Well, let me let you keep going.
Yeah, and so the other reason I like this idea of a cult customer is because it humanizes the people we're working with, right? And too often we're kind of using demographics and we're doing this wide berth of whoever needs our product. And what happens with that is that we start doing a little bit of everything for everyone, right? We start doing a little bit like a certain type of customer will ask for this kind of feature, or a certain type of customer will ask for this type of service. And what ends up happening is that a smaller business, the bottleneck starts coming alive really fast, right? The more multivariate type of customers you're trying to service in order to keep the lights on, it creates this kind of cyclical downward spiral of really clogging up
Now,
our ducks.
is that the complexity
Yeah, 100%.
of not okay, yeah, yeah, I get that. You're right, but it's such an interesting challenge because you're also experimenting in markets early on, right?
Yes, yes.
You're but I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, there's no science to this, right? There is this idea of kind of playing with it. The point I'm really trying to make here is that the moment we identify like a core persona of the type of people we're helping, everything just becomes super clear, right? And I can give you an example of this, right? Like one of the best examples of a cult customer is this is an easy example for those of you who know CrossFit, the famous gym and the exercise community. So CrossFit, it's a redonkulous kind of business in so many ways because anyone who's seen a CrossFitter knows that they are insanely passionate about what they do, right? And so what CrossFit does is that it plays on this idea, the core ideas of what is a cult customer community, right? They first enlist people who fight against the so-called power, right? So every true cult business is fighting the Goliaths of their industry, of their field. They're taking on some great big enemy. And so CrossFit is taking on all the boring, hyped up, over drenched, very expensive workouts and all those things. They're like, no, no, no. We hate all of that. We're very much all about the basics: barbells, sweat, and barbells and grunts. It's a very
Yeah.
simplistic thing that they say. And then they look for others just like them. So they create a tribe around that. And the best cults feel like a family because we all want to feel included. We all want to feel wanted by people, especially as society gets more and more isolating, right? And like CrossFit does that. The moment you come in, it's a very specific tribe. I'll give you a high five and there's no bullshit and you get right to work, right? And the third part of what CrossFit does well, which is a great part of what a cult base is that it embraces and encourages our type of quote unquote weirdos, right? We are all weirdos in something, right? We have specific tastes, we have very specific needs. The idea is to embrace that weirdo part of ourselves, right?
Weirdos will
And
spend money.
will spend money. They'll want places where they feel confident and accepted, right? And it's basically this kind of social identity theory that says that, hey, we like you just the way you are. Now come be part of our thing. And the moment you connect this last part, where you embrace and encourage and accept the weirdo aspect of that, it is a potent connection after that, right? Because the moment CrossFit did that, all of a sudden it attracts all the hardcore fitness freaks who want to be in the best shape, and they are just, I mean, I've never met a CrossFitter who doesn't like to talk about CrossFit. It creates a marketing engine, a rocket ship that does most of the marketing by itself, right? They are completely, and they do it because of those three things I mentioned. They're doing it in opposition to all the other people doing their silly, superficial workouts. And they feel very special because they're part of this community and they do it. And they share, they take selfies, they promote the thing, and it just becomes a rocket ship. So the best brands start by understanding who their cult customers is and just really tap into that, make them feel special, make them realize that they're part of a larger mission to fight the bad guys, and really dive deeper into that concept.
So I think it was Steve Jobs. He was asked about how successful he got so quickly, and he said, "Yeah, we were an overnight success in 18 years."
Right.
I, I'm just curious about that. You using going back to your dance of your 2 points and thinking about CrossFit. How long's the average dance to get to a little bit of scale when you're figuring out your hedgehog, how you make money, and then you're looking
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
cult customer?
Yeah.
As you've studied this,
Yeah.
can it happen in a year? Is it a
No. Yeah.
multi? Yeah,
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I don't think so. Not in a year. In fact, when I say small businesses, I mean companies that have been around for at least 4 to 5 years, because
I got you.
you have to get past that threshold of survival, right? Because like you said in the beginning, we're all just selling to whoever will buy from us. Um, but after you reach kind of that first layer of stability, and you're now maybe a $3 to $5 million or $7 million company, and you're trying to go further up, that point you have enough data and have a clear idea of who you are and who really resonates with your product in the market. So it's definitely, you have to have some skin in the game for a little bit of time before you have enough kind of data and people to parse through to know yourself and to know their cult customers. Yeah.
So, deflect the question if it's a little too much, but what's the how to here? If we've got somebody in year 4 or 5
Right.
survived, they're trying to figure, what advice would you give them other than call you and I and hire you? Where do they begin? Where honestly, I mean, and it'll
Yeah. Yeah.
happen, but what would and maybe it's feeding right into letting you continue to talk about your framework, but how does someone begin to self-assess here a little bit?
Yep.
What would you want
Yep.
them to do?
Yeah, it's very easy. You just take out a pen and pad. And every CEO I can do this with, I've done this with, and you can do this by yourself, right? Anywhere you are, anyone you are. Take out a pen and pad and start writing down who are the best customers that I've had in my experience, 5 to 10, 15, 20 years of running this business, right? And then you start writing down a list. Who are the people I love working with? Who are the people who are the easiest to work with? They don't give me headache, right? Who are the people who are the fastest to pay me? This is another way to kind of identify this group as well. They will pay you on time or not give you headaches about your price increases? And who are the people who are the most forgiving when I make mistakes? Whenever there's a problem, they're always like, it's okay, we'll hang in there. Once you start writing down this list, what you'll usually find is that you want a cross section of 5 to 10% of your customers that are driving the most profits. This list you then compare it to the list of customers that are driving most of the profits, a higher chunk of the profits. And this is a term called profit pools, right? So if you take out a list of our customers and we go comb through it, we'll see that there's a small group that pay the most, that are the most fanatical about it, and they love us no matter what. Once you identify this group, you then want to go deeper into what are the commonalities of this group. Because sometimes it might not be very apparent. It could be all over the place. It could be big customers, small customers. It could be people from a certain region, but not necessarily. And what you want to do is try to find the persona, the customer persona. So I'll give you an example. There was a company called Soleil Bicycles. And Soleil Bicycles was one of the first kind of e-commerce bicycle businesses of the early 2000s. And basically, when they came on the scene, they were one of the first ones there. So they were popping, right? And they a lot of buzz, a lot of people wanted to buy bicycles online, on the internet. But like with every maturing market, it got crowded, right? There were more e-commerce bike sites, and before they knew it, they were struggling. So what did? Did they try to sell new products in adjacent segments, or did they try to sell e-bikes or mountain bikes or things like that, which most of us would do? When the moment we're in a crowded market, we try to figure our way out of it, right?
You diversify out of it, right?
Exactly, diversify out of it. And there's nothing wrong with diversification. It's just that in this specific stage, we don't have the capabilities yet to be able to diversify well. We don't have the cash or the stability in the business to do that. So Soleil did the opposite. They went looking for their cult customers. They went into the books and did the same exercises that you and I talked about. And what they found was that the people who loved them the most weren't the exercisers, weren't the people who liked to bike for exercising. They weren't the people who liked to bike to get to work, which would have made a lot of sense. Their cult customers were bikers who had what they called a lifestyle radius, meaning these were people who biked as a way to really enjoy life. They would just take their bike out and bike around their house for 5 to 6 mile radius. And they just did it as a way to live, as a way to be. And the moment they figured this out, that these bikers, the ones who loved their bikes the most, were the ones who used the bike as a kind of a vehicle for self-expression and for showcase who they are as a personality, it changed. It clicked for them right away. From that moment on, Soleil Bicycles went from being a direct-to-consumer brand to becoming a fashion bicycle as an accessory brand, right? They changed their branding. And it's not that the core product changed much. Their identity changed because they now knew who they were speaking to and what that group of people wanted. And the moment they did that, they were off to the races again. They started killing it all over again. And so to me, that's a perfect example of a customer persona, right? This idea of like, what is your lifestyle radius? What is your customer's kind of core persona that you can kind of articulate with a few words?
I'm sensing that
And
it
the moment you
becomes
do that,
a conversation with your customer.
yes,
Once you find it, it becomes a
that's
back
right.
and forth versus something that I imagine if you don't know your core customer, your cult customer, there must be a lot of silence.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then everyone becomes a customer, right? Because your product, you have so much passion, you put so much love into it, and everyone, it's like, who doesn't want this product? Like, and then that leads small companies awry because if everyone's a customer, then no one's a customer, really, right?
Yeah. And if you need
So, yeah.
every feature, you have no features.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right.
That's right. Success is not complicated, right? It's the Bruce Lee quote. I fear not the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times.
1,000 times.
And it's really, that's the principle I'm trying to kind of drive here.
So I've been around 25 years. I think we use buyer persona to understand maybe who places orders in our business, who drives the interactions. But of course, the entrepreneur in me wants to refine this. The naysayers out here. I've been around 25 years. I don't need this stuff.
Yeah.
What are the obvious things that we're leaving on the table? I'm assuming profit, but you're going to tell me a lot more than that.
Right. Yeah. 100%. I mean, you think you are right. You are disabusing yourself of a lot of the market by doing this, right? Because we're focusing on 5 to 10% of the market. You're saying we're leaving behind 90% of the market, and so that aversion to loss, It's most CEOs or most entrepreneurs who have a lot of pressure on them to say, no, I can't do that. How can we do that? Right. And I think, again, that's a fallacy,
It is.
because it seems like we're giving up so much, but what we're really doing is we're diving deeper into our core profit pool, like the engine that's going to drive most of it, right? So one of the things I like about cult customers is that it allows you to suck at a lot of things so that you can focus on the most important thing. Okay. Like the secret to hyper growth is in having the guts to do certain things really badly. And I like this concept a lot. And there are tons of stories around companies that do this. But basically, what I'm trying to tell you is exactly the point you're saying. Be okay alienating or upsetting 90% of your potential customers. But you're not going to do this unless you have a very strong identity and a core idea and a mission about what it is you're trying to do in the marketplace. And so it is a duality of it. You have to be okay pissing people off so that you can double down on your cult customers, right? And that branding is key here. Once you plant that flag and say, this is what I believe, come hell or high water, I'm going to stand by it. If you don't stand by it, when people are leaving you, then people are going to know, like, well, he or she or they are not that serious about it. But if you stand by it when things are going bad, that's how you build brand value. Now in the marketplace, you'll be known as that one person. So I'll give you another example of a company that really kind of doubled down on this idea of being strategically bad at most things people would do in their market. Right. So there's this company called Death Wish Coffee. I don't know if you're familiar with them. And
I am a little bit. Yeah.
a little bit. Okay. So people know about this. It's a coffee brand that's been out there for a while. And the founder, Michael Brown, when he started it, he was coming into a very ubiquitous market, right? Like there's a struggling sea of coffee brands out there. There's so many people doing so many different types of coffees. So when he started, the industry experts told him, what? Look, here's the thing. Don't try to do very strong coffees. Don't do the strong Robusta beans. Try to do something relaxing. People want very kind of different types of flavors. Mike did what a lot of people do in business, which is they listen to the conventional wisdom of what their peers are doing and they start doing that. But he found out things were not working out, right? Like he just wasn't growing. They were kind of stagnating and they were going downwards too. And that's when Mike had a kind of a come to Jesus moment where he sat with himself one day and he said, okay, why am I doing this? Why did I start this business? And he said, yeah, I started Death Wish Coffee because of kind of like what the name hints. He's like, I needed really, really, really strong coffee to push through my hard day. And I just didn't see another coffee doing it. He said, that's right. That's exactly why I started this. So he's like, all right, you know what? If I'm going to go down, because the company was kind of going downward at that point, he said, I'm going to go down swinging, right? So he took his remaining marketing budget and he bet it all on this one type of customer. And this was his customer persona. The guy who's a little rough around the edges, a hard worker, a family man, and they need a ton of caffeine, right? His customer persona were the people who are like, kind of think of it as industry, like construction workers or people who are doing really hard hitting work. They need a lot of caffeine to push through the day. He doubled down on it. So he took the basic, so the way that he did it was he doubled the caffeine of a regular cup of Joe. So right, while health experts saw this, they immediately railed against it. They were like, this is horrible. This is too much caffeine. All the blogs and the press around him were negative. This is unhealthy. You're going to put yourself in danger. Again, Mike saw all this bad press and he doubled down again on it, right? He saw that the FDA had set the safe limit at like something like 400 milligrams per day. And he went to like 420 milligrams of caffeine in just one cup. Right? He took what was the legal health limit and he just kind of pushed it over the edge. And that is intentional. That is a very intentional move by him because it pissed off a lot of people in the coffee world. But then guess what happened? All of a sudden, out of the woodwork, started coming these people. These really hardcore coffee aficionados who needed that caffeine. They just started dripping in. And before he knew it, it became a volume of business that all came to him. Because there was no other coffee maker in the market that doubled down on this proclamation, on this promise that we're going to really, really drown you in caffeine so that you can get through your hard-hitting day. And to me, that's a perfect example of doing a lot of conventional things bad, but just doubling down on the core promise to your cult customers. So I love that as an example of going in.
It's a terrific story, and it gets me often thinking about a whole lot of things of how how hard that decision must have been.
Yeah.
Most people are, it's interesting about the process, right? When you talked about Death Wish, it was a reflection around his original core, and
That's
he kind
right.
of went with it.
That's right.
It wasn't a marketing research company inviting 10 coffee drinkers in. This can be a bit more guttural then. This can be
Yes,
something that an entrepreneur, I'm not saying they should go it alone, but this is something that management teams can do themselves if they're willing to do the work.
that's right. If they're willing to do the work, and it requires courage, right? Because again, like you just mentioned, you're letting go of a ton of your customers, right? And it's a process. Nobody does that overnight. It takes a lot to kind of really focus in, but you have to believe in what you're selling. You are not going to
Yeah,
let go of money on the table unless you fundamentally believe that the core proposition of what you're serving to these customers is so valuable that it will outdo any other growth or profits you could make in any other space. And so you have to have that fundamental self belief. Otherwise, you're not going to you're not going to stick with it. When it gets hot in the kitchen, you'll get out. Your
so
investors will come pushing on you and you'll get out.
Nikhil, the question that comes to mind for me, does most of the great stories come from the constraint of failing?
Mm,
Is it the
right.
pivot to that moment, like, I'm trying to do this a convention? I'm just curious. If not, I'm sure you'll figure that out down the line as you work with customers. I would bet that there's a constraint that causes this insight, and then you go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think part of it is the companies, at least in my research that I've studied and looked at, yeah, there is a moment of desperation where it's like double down on something or just forget about it. There's definitely that. But then there are also these cult leaders, right? If you genuinely believe something and you've believed something your whole life, the business is an expression of that belief. If you're that quote unquote weirdo and you've not found anyone else speaking to you, then the company becomes a haven for yourself first and foremost, right? So it could be both ways. You could either come at it out of a sheer last moment gamble to really bet the whole farm on something, or the business from the get go is a reflection of something you've been seeking your whole life in that space.
You're creating the weirdo community to feel
Exactly. That you
connected
never
with.
had. That you never had.
That is a lovely notion. All right, well, where do you want to go from here with your
Yeah.
framework?
So for me, the cult customers, I love it not just because of this idea that it allows you to really kind of give you more space to grow and whatnot, but it really, in a lot of ways, I think cult customers allow you to invert the gravity in your business. Like you can basically topple the laws of the universe of your business. I find that very fascinating. Like the best businesses, the cult business that I know, really kind of don't do any of the conventional things that businesses in your space do. Like the most famous examples are, the Ben and Jerry's, right? An ice cream company that is deeply enmeshed in fighting for human rights, climate change, activist causes. What does ice cream have to do with any of these things? Not much, but it's a perfect reflection of that core identity of the company. And because they know that everything they do speaks to that type of cult audience, they get away with it. They get away with marketing murder, right? And I think that's what cult customers allow you to do. They get away, you get to get away with things that most other businesses would not be able to get away with. Another example, Patagonia is very famous for being a kind of a steward of the earth. Their biggest, they say their biggest stakeholder is planet Earth. One of their big commercials, marketing things that they still have to this day is they say, don't buy too many of our jackets. Here's some ideas on how to conserve and repair your jackets so that we're not using too much of the earth's resources, natural resources, right? Again,
I'm a 25-year Patagonia
there you
weirdo.
go. There you go. Now you know.
So much so that my hiking group goes by the Misfits the way Yvon Chouinard went by the Misfits. So,
Yes. Wow.
so no, I'm a weirdo, and I get it.
That's right.
You know, I could show you a Patagonia jacket I've had for 20 years with patches
Oh, wow.
right there.
Wow.
That the point is, don't replace it, wear it. So
That's right. That's right.
I get it.
That's right.
That's a great story, and you're right, because I get your point about marketing murder, because it's by no means the push of a product the way the rest of the world sells jackets.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's right.
Interesting.
That's right. Yeah, and it goes deeper than that too. And again, I'm so fascinated by it. Like, okay, let's use another one. A company I'm really fond of, Costco. Costco lives in the world of retail. Retail has one of the worst turnover rates. It's very hard to be profitable in brick and mortar stores. But then Costco does something which is really the engine of their profit making machine, which is that they make most of their money not through the products they sell, but they make most of their money, I think, through their memberships.
For sure.
Right? And anyone who knows Costco knows that a Costco membership is like getting access to the most secretive, like amazing, coolest
You're
club
in a
in some
very
ways.
cool club.
In a
You're in a
very cool
cult
club.
club.
Exactly. But also, if you go into Costco, it's just a warehouse. There's nothing like, but people go bananas over their Costco membership. I mean, it is a true definition of a cult mentality. That just allows Costco to just really invert the laws of their business, right? Like their most popular products are like pizzas and hot dogs. They sell rotisserie chickens, and one of the things they've done is they've maintained the price of the rotisserie chicken the same over the past, I don't know how many ever years, even with all the inflation and whatnot. And part of the reason for that is because they do what their core audience loves. Right? They're all about that experience for the big family mom shoppers who want to like shop and feel like a cool journey through their halls. Costco is a great example of a company that really speaks to their cult audience. From that cult audience, create a very sustainable business model in the memberships, and that then allows them to do quirky things and very kind of like these nice little gifts for their customers that their customers love. And as a result, also the employees love it. The culture of the employees in an environment where people last 1 to 2 years in retail. I think Costco people work for like 9 to 10 years. Like they have a 401k, they get paid $30 to $40 an hour. So my point is that it stems in my perspective, from this original premise. They figured out their core cult audience and then really doubled down on it and found a workable, sustainable business model that only their customers afforded them that opportunity to be.
And it seems like that it's a tapestry that can come together over time that you figure out.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's a, you know, I the dark side. I always go to the other side. Well, Costco's a public company. They've got liquidity. They've got money to spend. But that's what's unique about your juicy red customer is finding the 5 to 10 year business that's got this mostly figured out, but tweaks it a little bit and it finds its cult
That's right.
customer. And
That's
then
right.
it goes.
That's right. That's right.
It's
So in the profit
extraordinary.
pools, from the profit pools to, to the marketing buzz, to the kind of inverted business logic that comes with just serving that core customer, it's amazing what all you can do the moment you kind of hyper focus on that.
So if you have more to share on your framework, please continue. But you're research based. Any recommendations on research or books that you think the audience might benefit from? We can put it in show notes. Anything in particular you reference that you'd like people to learn
Yeah.
more about?
Yeah, I mean, again, Vern Harnish's book Scaling Up is a fantastic book that does talk about this. Another one is Uncommon Service: How to Win by Putting Customers at the Core of the Business. I think those are Harvard
See
professors.
how many of these I can.
Oh yeah, there you go. There you go. Scaling Up. There it is. He has it in his hand.
And
There you go.
Uncommon Services on the bookshelf there. So keep
Perfect.
going.
Yeah, and again, those are two kind of fundamental books that really help me kind of think through it. But honestly, the idea is more about like thinking about your favorite brand and think about why do you love that brand? Because if
Mm.
you can kind of self-deduct and kind of do a first principle approach on your favorite brands and why you're so fanatical about them, even against all logic, you'll then understand, okay, how do I recreate some of the same magic in my own business? And once you see that as a magic, I think that's the best way to think of this. Cult customers, the verbiage I'm using also works well with the metaphor of magic. You have to believe on some level that the product or the experience you're giving to them is a magical experience. And so, yeah, I would always tell to think about the brands that you love so much, especially growing up as teenagers. That's a good time to think about things that had such an impact on you as a coming of age moment in your life. And you can then connect to that feeling. And once you understand that feeling, then you can translate that feeling to strategy in your own business and your own life.
And the Your advice on the how-to of how to approach it, take out a pen and paper and do that is really good. Yeah, you've certainly got this old sage reflecting of how the heck did I get this far without knowing who my cult customer is. Like, but no, I think I can see how those that survive apply part of this, but could benefit it from organizing it into a way where it becomes an operational approach to things. It, it's a I can see how it's a process that feeds itself once you figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not that, look, there are a lot of businesses that survive without doing this. And I'm not throwing shade on any one of them. There's no right or wrong way in a lot of ways. I think what I'm coming from is a perspective of how do you scale the business in a faster, more sustainable and authentic way. To me, this is, in my estimation, one of the most effective ways to scale the business. You can do it in multiple ways, but I think this is a fast, sustainable, and authentic way to scale the business.
And that's your cult customer.
Yeah, that's right. That's my cult customer. That's exactly right.
How interesting. No, I think no, understanding that, I think it's terrific.
That's right.
I
That's right.
love your stories. We've got a lot out. Any other lessons or things that you'd like to wrap up with strong here? Any, you know, final stories or closing advice or frankly any way you'd like to go with this to keep it strong?
Yeah, I think, the business that we're in, the work that we've done, I think about a lot with that entrepreneurs sweat so much. They bleed so much for their business. And I think it's worth doing this internal work on understanding who loves you the most and being okay with not pleasing everybody. I think if we can kind of work on really all, again, it comes back to what I was talking about before, which is that all of the strategy, growth, the leadership, the culture, it all really stems first and foremost from the entrepreneur, the CEO's internal demons. If you can sit with the discomfort
Yes.
of disappointing people, of you not having the accolades and all the praise that you would get from being this widely seen business, and instead just say, "Oh, what if I just focus on my fundamentals and really trust my gut and intuition and really sit with what I know to be is the core part of my persona and the core part of the people I enjoy serving the most." If you can, it takes a lot of kind of self work to sit with those demons of, like, disappointment and fear and absolute abject terror and letting go of so many customers. If you can sit with all those emotions, those tough, uncomfortable emotions, and really focus on this kind of zen moment in your business, amazing things will come. And I think that's my mission, right? I love entrepreneurs who bleed and kind of build things. And if I can help them get through that, like, valley of dark emotions, so they can come on the other side and see this beautiful promise that they've come. It's not like we're artificially created. It's connected to their core authentic identity and the people who meet them halfway. The moment you get them to that promised land, it is a beautiful journey, and it creates not just profits and growth. It also creates an amazing company, and it allows you to be a more thoughtful leader with a better culture and people who really love the jobs that they're doing. So to me, that's where this is coming from. I want people to feel deeply connected again to the business they started out in the first place.
So I'll close with I think it's a very strong connection for you to talk about that founder's purpose of why they
Mm,
started that business. That's an incredibly strong link because most likely, and there's good research on that, whether it's building a better mousetrap or service or something more technical. I think there's only five, why do businesses get founded? And then
right.
seeing how that ties to your
That's
weirdo
right.
mode and
Right.
how that ties to your customer. It's a very
That's right.
strong link.
That's right.
And it helped, of course, I'm processing it myself. We talk every week anyway, it seems like, but it's been great to have you as a guest. As you get into your research and have more stories and experiences, will you come back and see us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love talking to you, Chris. So
Oh
100%.
yeah, and we'll just do it now off mic. Well, it's
That's
been
right.
I think it's fair to say we've answered the question of, who is a cult customer, what is a cult customer, and maybe more importantly, the role it can play in helping your business scale in kind of a fun, much more profitable way.
That's right.
Appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.